Are we getting any closer to justice for your mother, for your family, for your country?
We've never been closer to justice for all three. We spent 2 years suspecting that the Prime Minister's office might have had a hand in my mother's assassination. And in the past 2 weeks, one sickening detail after another has emerged showing how very closely linked the Prime Minister and the people around him were to the cover-up of my mother's assassination. Today in court, we found out that the middleman contracted to hire hitmen to place a bomb under my mother's car seat was actually an employee of the government, and he was given this job by the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff directly. We also found out that a personal bodyguard of the Prime Minister was used as a go-between to try to influence the middleman, or rather as a go-between between the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and the hitmen who were at that point in time already in custody. So this bodyguard was sent to speak to the middleman, asking him to speak to the hitmen, offering them $1 million each in cash and guaranteeing them that they'd receive bail on 22nd November 2018. So now we already have 3 or 4 people employed in the office of the Prime Minister who are directly linked to the middleman in my mother's assassination, let alone Jorgen Fenech, the oligarch who has now been charged with commissioning my mother's assassination. Jorgen Fenech is actually a contractor for the government. He's a shareholder in our only power station, which supplies our electricity grid with electricity.
And when Prime Minister Joseph Muscat announced he was stepping down, did you take it as an admission of guilt?
He never actually explained why he was resigning, which is bizarre. It was like a resignation out of the blue. Obviously, everyone could see the context of his resignation, that his chief of staff had been arrested and interrogated in connection with my mother's assassination. So it was obvious why he had resigned, but it shows his contempt for the Maltese public that he never actually explained why.
When you look back to 2 years ago, when your mom was working on this, do you think she realized just how big this was, how dangerous it was, and how many powerful enemies she was making?
Of course she realized. She was perfectly aware, but she didn't think anyone would be stupid enough to murder her. But as we, today sitting in court, listening to the middleman testify, I couldn't help thinking, what an idiot. He ruined his own life. He ruined so many people's lives. He ended up wanting to commit suicide. And why? And my mother thought no one would be stupid enough to do that. But unfortunately, there are enough people in Malta who didn't realize what murdering a journalist really means and what the consequences of that would be.
Did the fact that they thought that they would get away with it tell you all you need to know about the level of corruption in the country also?
Yes, and the more people testify, the more we realize that these people believed that the Maltese police would never be able to crack this case. So the middleman in court today testified that he went to speak to the man who commissioned him in a panic, saying, now they've brought in the FBI, what are we going to do? And the man who commissioned him said, what are you worried about? The FBI will be working with the Maltese police, so there's nothing to worry about. This betrays an exceptional level of self-confidence that they would have gotten away with it. And they probably weren't aware.
Certainly.
Sorry.
No, are they rattled? Does it seem as if they're completely rattled right now?
Yes, I mean, I saw the businessman Jorgen Fenech in court a few days ago, and he looked like a broken man. The Giorgio brothers, the hitmen, they're hardened criminals. It's impossible to know what they're thinking. But we receive reports that they're having a very hard time in prison. I mean, frankly, I don't care either way. People in government, cabinet ministers, so people who previously took instructions from the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, seem to be seriously rattled. They seem to be I don't. There are reports. None of them speak publicly, but there are reports in the press that they're traumatized. They're breaking down in tears. I don't know whether to believe it or not, because publicly they're still supporting the prime minister, even if there are reports of a serious sense of shock within government.
The EU lawmakers were suggesting that this Maltese government wasn't internally investigating in good faith. Is that true?
We know that it's not true, because the police investigators appear to have been acting in good faith. They were briefing the prime minister and his chief of staff on progress in the investigation. And by progress, I don't mean general updates on where the investigation stands, but detailed reports on who they were planning to arrest and when they were planning to arrest them. So it emerged in court today that the 3 hitmen were tipped off about their arrest. We also know that the middleman seems to have been tipped off about his arrest, and we know for sure that Jorgen Fenech was tipped off about his arrest because he was caught attempting to flee the country. So who was providing this information to these people in each chain in the assassination plot? We know that Keith Kembry has attempted to cover up my mother's assassination, and we know that he also received detailed briefings from the police. So the country now suspects the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff of having attempted to trip up police investigators every step of the way and placing their lives in danger.
Andrew, when we look at the legacy of this work, the fact that your mother spearheaded the Panama Papers investigation, and it had global ramifications, it brought down not just your prime minister, but it brought down a prime minister in Pakistan, arguably, and everybody knows about the Panama Papers now. How would she have felt about the impact of her work all these years on?
When I was at the protests on Sunday, I took one photo, and it was of a huge black and white photo of my mother smiling and looking down on the crowd. And I like to think that that's the way she feels now about what happened.
Andrew Caruana Galizia, pleasure talking to you. I thank you so much.